it's very hard to just browbeat young people into not getting free music. I mean, the movie business tried that, and it doesn't really work. And then you could try and sue the individual consumer, and that doesn't really work either. So my take is it's the responsibility for the people who run the platforms to make sure that the people who get paid are the artists. And so that has a double side, one of which is, well, most of these platforms are ad supported. And so the people who pay for ads, advertisers, ought to be careful where they put their ads. So I noticed recently a controversy in England because YouTube is running lots of ads for kind of child pedophile kind of stuff.
Terrible. There was a recent article in the Times, and there were even sort of blocked out photographs.
Right.
Yeah, pedophilia,
so
child
YouTube's
pornography.
running all this content that's just horrible stuff. And yet the people who are posting that are getting paid by advertisers. So it's the advertisers who should be responsible, just in the same way that the same advertisers were kind of shocked that YouTube was running ISIS recruitment videos.
And in fairness, I think the corporates did react. So I think Adidas and Diageo and some of these companies are reacting and saying they're pulling their advertising.
Yeah,
and the question is,
that's good.
Yeah, it is very good.
That's a social, ethical responsibility to not be supporting bad stuff. But that same thing should apply to, I shouldn't support free content. In other words, I shouldn't put my ads on pirate sites, or I shouldn't put my ads on YouTube that's
a very
running
interesting
free
point,
music.
because society tends to react much more strongly to pedophilia or ISIS than to the pirated content, and possibly because we all don't understand very well what that is and where it is, and where there is kind of violation of fair compensation and fair rights for artists.
So that's the first problem. The second problem is that the big sites, that is YouTube, Amazon, Facebook, have got to begin to police their platforms better. Now, partially that comes back into the question you asked about the election and all that. In other words, the problem with these platforms is they have lived under, at least in the United States, I don't know really about the UK, but they've lived under what's called a safe harbor regulation, which meant that no one could sue them for putting up content that they either objected to or that they didn't own. The notion was, when this law was passed, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, was that you couldn't ask Verizon, say, or British Telecom to police all the content was flowing over its pipe, which is a reasonable idea.
It is a reasonable idea.
But YouTube is different. YouTube actually polices its pipes quite well. There's no actually outright pornography. There's lots of sketchy stuff, but there's not just flat out porn on YouTube, because YouTube has very good artificial intelligence. When it sees real porn, then it blocks it from ever getting on the platform.
I want to just pause for a second here. You used a term in your book that I thought was excellent, which was false choices. And you use an example, if I'm remembering correctly, where some of the social media companies are saying, if you want us to do social good, like, Tahrir Square, the Arab Spring, then you can't regulate us. And you point that up as a false choice, I thought was a fantastic term, because if they're capable of, as you're saying, eradicating pornography, then they're capable of other things. For example, the recent controversy over online sex trafficking in the US. And a number of them came out and said they were against it, they were lobbyists in Washington, et cetera. But I think your point is that if they're capable of eradicating one thing, they're capable of eradicating other harms to society.
I mean, it's shocking to me, but Google fought that law to ban online child sex trafficking tooth and nail, until at some point somebody said to them, this is really stupid what you're doing. You're really on the wrong side, and you're just going to sully your reputation so badly. And then they just gave up, and they're going to let that law pass. Now, that is the first modification of this safe harbor that they've ever allowed. But to my point of view, the all those ISIS videos or these childhood semi-pedophile videos are just as evil
Of course they are.
as the flat-out child sex trafficking.
And incidentally, whilst there can be certain areas, for example, we'll get into terrorism in a moment,
Right.
where there might be legitimate free speech concerns. And even there, I'm interested in your view about the company's responsibility
Right.
to take terrorist content down and also the
Right.
regulatory efforts. This is clearly not protected speech.
Right.
There's no part of this that is protected
Right.
speech, aside from the outrageous health and safety and moral
Right.
issue. So there isn't even the counter-argument of free speech.
No, and I mean, Justice Holmes said you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. When it didn't happen, you're just going to cause chaos, and that's essentially what's happening here.